The learning sequence provided prepares students for the Let's Party assessment, which looks at adding and subtracting decimals, multiplying decimals by whole numbers, and calculating percentage discounts of 10% and 25% on sale items. The assessment does also look at using measurement of length and area to map out an appropriate floor plan. However, as this content descriptor fits into a different category of mathematics, it will have been learnt prior to this learning sequence. This learning sequence focuses on the curriculum area of decimals, fractions, and percentages. In this task, Year 6 students will be preparing their own party proposal for their end of year celebration as they finish primary school. They will submit this proposal to the teacher, and the teacher will choose one to use as the final product. There are conditions for the students to meet, including a budget, what they need to buy, the websites that they can access to buy these items. These are all user-friendly websites, and the discounts that apply to each of those stores. They also have been told the different assortment of foods they need to provide and the serving equipment. A checklist has been provided for the students so that they can use that to go through and to ensure that they have included each part of the assignment. Scaffolding has been provided in the appendix of this assessment to help the students work through the task. These includes things like the budget, the discount sale record sheet, and a final summary including reflection questions to encourage metacognition. Lesson 1 looks at adding and subtracting decimals with and without digital technologies. There is a hook, which is part of the engage section, where they will just discuss different things about their lunch and food and things, just to draw the children into the learning and to apply that prior learning and make that connection to the concept. In the Explore, they use explicit instruction pedagogy of I do, we do, you do. So the educator will demonstrate the addition and subtraction of a decimal, which is done through a YouTube video prepared by the teacher. The we do is then that they will go into a more hands-on problem-solving task, which is in Appendix B, the lunch menu activity. The teacher will demonstrate this by doing the Monday lunch menu option, and then the you do section will be for the students to go on and do Tuesday to Friday and calculate the total cost independently. The differentiation that can be included in that section is for students who struggle with that, can then work in a small group or in pairs, the small group with the teacher to work through the Tuesday to Friday. And then they finish up with an evaluate, which is a collaborative discussion to discuss their answers and strategies for the addition and subtraction of decimals, as well as answering some questions which scaffold for the assessment. So these questions relate to similar questions that they will use as a reflection section on the assessment. The resources and links have been provided there in the YouTube video and the appendix. For the pedagogy of this lesson, explicit instruction is used quite prominently, and this basically is a way of constructive theory. So students are scaffolded a set of instructions modelled by the teacher that will then be applied independently. The other one that is used in there is a little bit of prior learning or metacognition, where they are relating the mathematics to their own life through the hook, but that's just a subtle link there. Reflection is key to the metacognition as well, and so that is their ability to understand their own learning and their own ability to understand the task. Formative assessment has been applied here, so obviously the more observable things by the teacher, including responses and observations during the discussion. However, the more practical content including show me boards, using show me boards for the We Do section, the mathematics in their books of the full working out, as well as the completed lunch menu sheet will be used to ensure children have understood the task. Lesson 2 moves on to multiplying with decimals with whole numbers, with and without technologies. Once again, the explanation video of YouTube has been used to explain this strategy and give some explicit instructions. And this video also shows them how to use the calculator to check their answers and to find out the answers. The activity sheet that's provided for this one is just to practice some multiplication of decimals by whole numbers on their own independently. However, the teacher can form a small group to provide some more guidance on the task, and as students understand the task, they can then leave and go back to their own personal learning space and complete the rest independently. Once they've finished that, they can then jump onto their iPads and do an online game where the students have to use their multiplication of decimals by whole numbers concept that they have just learnt to play the game. And then once a few students have finished all those tasks and have had a go at the online game, they can then join a group together to play bingo with each other. And this is a more kinesthetic activity where students are able to use spinners to select a decimal and a multiplication, and then they can, if their answer to that question is on their bingo board, they get to cross off that square. To make this a little bit more interesting, I've also added the inclusion that another child in the group has to use the calculator to not only just check the other students' work, but to also have a practice of calculating these equations using technologies. So a major part of the pedagogical perspective of this lesson is collaborative learning, that within the group with the teacher as well as bingo, and this really forms the social constructivism theory, or falls into that theory. The students are able to discover their learning on their own. So rather than just handing them over the information, they're able to discover it themselves. And they work together in groups for a common good, and it allows them to keep each other accountable and to bounce their ideas off one another and to use the knowledge of each other to create an end goal. The formative assessment for this task, once again, we've got our discussions and our observations by the teachers, but the more concrete materials include the practice sheet of the multiplication of decimals by whole numbers and the working out of those in their math books of the sheet, as well as the bingo game and the online game. Lesson 3 and 4 kind of go together, but lesson 3 starts the scaffolding of working out discounts with percentages for sales, and we start with 50%, which is quite a common bit of an easier percentage to work with, and then in lesson 4 we move on to some more extended learning of that. So once again, we look at the prior knowledge that the students have and connect that to themselves, in terms of looking in the hook by looking at, have you ever seen a sale in the shops, or your parents, and different things like that, and what does a sale mean? But the prior knowledge that they look at is the links between percentages, decimals, and fractions, and this will have been something that they will have learnt prior to this activity. And a quick review of that can be displaying some fractions on the board and calling out the different decimals and percentages that are equivalent to those fractions. After the hook, they then go into the explicit instructions. So once again, laid out in the I do, we do, you do format, using the YouTube video as an explanation to the students of how to calculate them with 50%. Then going into the we do, where the teacher displays the some prices on the board and use this as a guide to demonstrate with the class how to apply those percentages. And the students can use the show me boards to show that they actually understand and use that as a check for understanding. The you do is where the students then go and take the Pandora's Party Palace sheet, and they have to work out, now that there's a 50% sale applied to the prices of these items, how much do these items now cost? Students who are not confident can work in pairs or in small groups, or with the teacher as some guided practice. However, those who are more confident can work independently. Once again, explicit instruction is a key pedagogy model used within this lesson. However, the activation of prior knowledge is far more prevalent in this lesson. So this is just to create meaning and resemble new information to their current knowledge and understanding. It's always important with prior knowledge to assess this understanding and to ensure that they have a good understanding of it and that it hasn't got any misconceptions that may need to be addressed before continuing with the lesson. Questioning and more inquiry-based questioning is key in this lesson as well. And this is an interactive strategy which is able to engage and challenge students. And this is obviously a more active participant of the teacher who has to be questioning the students. The formative assessment of this lesson is the parent independent work. The show me boards is a check for understanding, but obviously the completed Pandora's Party Palace sheet would be a big part of this. The discussion at the start of the prior knowledge, while isn't applying to the learning objective, it is to check the validity of their understanding and to ensure there are no misconceptions within the class. Lesson 4 is a follow-on from Lesson 3, where they're now using the calculation of 10% and 25% along with the 50% prior. So in this one, the engage section is to just recap what they've learned in the 50% and then to apply that to the new percentages. And for some students, this will be quite easy and they will be able to move on to the activity without any major troubles. However, for the few that require some more assistance to apply the 10% and the 25%, the instruction video has been provided. So this is not necessarily going to be watched by all students, but only by those who need a bit more scaffolding or maybe even some differentiation. The show me boards are once again used as a way to check for understanding, and once the students have been able to show that understanding, they can then move on to the online activity. This lesson is heavily involves ICT. So the first activity is for students to go online and look at the percentage matchup. So this looks more at checking that they're able to find the percentage of an answer and match that to the correct answer. So while it's not put in dollars and cents and things like that as they do with discounts, it is still applying the mathematical knowledge and just matching them up. And this game is really important as a starting point, as it provides the answers on the screen. So students aren't having to work the answer out themselves. It's in some ways like a multiple choice, as they have the choices there, but it just helps them to guide them through before doing the calculation completely independently. Once they've been able to do that, then once the whole class has been able to have a go at that, they then come together for a class game. So the class plays the life cycle game, where the students progress through the different stages of a butterfly, And what they have to do is they have to, when they find, so they start as a larva or like an egg. When they find another larva to verse, they go over to their iPad and they use the Space Invaders game. So they'll each play, which is a percentage game. So they each play on their own iPad, and they will pick the same percentage to do. It might be 10%, 25% or 50%. They select the percentages that they want to do, they play the game, and then they compare their scores at the end. Whoever got the most correct progresses to the next stage of the butterfly life cycle, where they will become a caterpillar. And the person who lost will stay as a larva and have to go find another larva to verse. The person who's now progressed to a caterpillar has to go find another caterpillar to verse. And this continues on through the stages of the life cycle: larva, caterpillar, cocoon, and butterfly. And whoever gets to be the butterfly first wins, or we usually choose 4 or 5 butterflies are the winners of the game. And this can be played repetitively until students have been able to have a go at the Space Invaders game and really be able to work through those percentages. An extension game or a fast finishers game for this lesson is Choice Toys. This is far more of an extension game, as students are now having to apply this learning to the shop context, where they have to select some items and work out the original price of the items, the discounted amount, and then the new price. But on top of this, there are some percentages in there that branch outside of the 10, 25 and 50%. So this is an extended learning activity. The pedagogy used in this one is very clearly ICT pedagogy and a bit of that game-based learning. So students are being able to incorporate this technology to create fun and interactive learning, and in a modern format that's more susceptible to the 21st century. And the teacher really needs to create an environment that encourages this collaboration and inquiry-based learning through games, and showing that we can use ICT as a consolidation of our understanding of a concept. So working through the understanding first and then using the game to consolidate that learning. And ICT can be used in many different ways. Consolidation is not the only way, but that's the way it's been used in this lesson. And the formative assessment is very clearly the show me boards at the start and the questioning and the discussion, but the screenshot of the matching game. So once they've finished the matching game and gotten a perfect score, they send that screenshot to their teacher. So that is then able to show that they've had that understanding, as well as the class game of Space Invaders. And then for those extended learnings, the Choice Toys would also be a formative assessment. The last lesson of this learning sequence is for students to combine all of their understanding of the decimals, fractions and percentage concept that have been covered into one game-based learning task. So the classroom would be set up like a shop, and with different discount prices on different shelves and different things like that. The students will have to pick at least 3 items each time, and they must pick at least 2 of the same item. So they can pick 2 of item A and then 1 of item B. However, if they would like to pick more than 3 items, they can do that as well, as long as they have a bulk quantity of a particular item. And that just helps to incorporate the multiplication of decimals concept in there as well. The students can then take that back to their desk, and they can work through the formula of finding the original price and going through each item and working out the discount to find the new price. And they add those together, so that incorporates that addition of decimals. They'll need to use multiplication of decimals when working out the bulk quantity, the price of a bulk quantity item. And then they'll use subtraction when they have to find out how much change they have. So each student will have a different personal budget, and they'll be given an envelope of plain money that's their budget. And to create that difference in the class, to make it more realistic, each child will have a different amount in their envelope, and they've got to decide what they can afford with that money. And the teacher can decide to swap the envelopes around to give them different practice and different things, but that will probably come during the lesson as it goes. If the students do need help and they're a bit lost of how to calculate this, they can use a QR code that would be placed in several different areas around the room. So they can use their iPad to scan the QR code, which will take them to a YouTube video which steps them through the whole process of calculating the buyer's experience. So they will calculate each of the items to the new price after the discount. It'll show them how to multiply for a bulk quantity item. It shows them how to add the full totals together and to then see if it can fit into their budget and how much change they get from that budget if it does fit in. So that video is more used for students who need that extra help. The pedagogy is strongly game-based learning in this lesson. In game-based learning, it's creating an environment that is in game form because it's not real, but it resembles a real life experience, and they get to apply their knowledge and their, in this case, mathematical understanding to a real world example. And this helps students create like an identity within the scenario, and they can learn from failures, possibly maybe choosing items that are too expensive or something like that, but then it helps them to gain a bit more understanding of how to select different items based on their prices and things like that. It helps them to give immediate feedback, so they're able to select the items and already get the feedback straight away to understand if they've been able to have success or they need to try again. This lesson can be differentiated through technologies mainly. So students who do want to use the calculator can use that. However, the educator should encourage some of the calculations to be done without a calculator. The formative assessment is very hands-on for this one. The educator should be using questioning throughout the lesson to check that they're understanding and ask them, why have you chosen this? Why did you go back to swap that for another item? Different questions like that to get them thinking, as well as obviously the full calculations that they will be using to work out their answers.